Well, earlier, my colleague Nick Clark spoke with Al Jazeera's Gaza Bureau Chief Wael Dahdouh, who lost his wife, 2 children and a grandchild to Israeli attacks. His eldest son, Hamza, was also a journalist, and he was killed in a targeted Israeli strike on a car carrying a group of media workers in January last year. Wael described the challenges facing journalists working under constant threats to their lives.
ما يجري ليس معقول وليس مبرر.
What is happening is unjustifiable and not in line with any law, with any humanitarian law or any human values. Therefore, this is astonishing and we should condemn it. How can they target a tent where journalists were sheltering? Everybody knows who was in this tent. They are parts of the Al Jazeera family and they work from this tent. So I think that such a thing was targeted. It was done on purpose, and that's why we are surprised and astonished. Why would you target our colleague Anas al-Sharif and his colleague, Mohammed, and other colleagues and the team that was with him? And before this, there was also a series of murdering journalists who were targeted and killed in different ways in different places while they were doing their job. So the question is, why are they also targeting the family members of the journalists? I personally had my family members, including my wife, my children, my cousins from both sides, all killed in the same attack. And why? We don't know. Nobody has an answer. Therefore, we are asking, what does Israel want from these consecutive and continuing attacks? We do not understand it, and it cannot be justified.
You've lived and breathed that life as a reporter in Gaza. Give us a window of what it's like to brave the daily threats from the Israelis, of everything that's going on around you, of the daily killing that's happening, and then at the end of the day, still being under threat and not being able to leave this front line.
باختصار شديد الصحفي في قطاع غزة.
I can say briefly that a journalist in Gaza is working in a minefield. It's like someone who would put his soul in his hand and just walk away. He knows that he could be the news, the breaking news at any moment. Or it could be his friend, his colleagues, or even his family members. Sometimes from the same media family. Or sometimes it's a friend, a neighbour, or any displaced person in the tents. The Palestinian journalist carries out his job on the street. They live on the street. They do not have a home. They do not have an office. They do not have logistical support. They do not have security or safety. And when possible, they shelter in a tent. So they carry out their work from the street, literally. For example, if they lose their mobiles or an electrical cable and want to replace it, they do so in extreme fear. They are scared of being targeted at any moment by the drones that are jamming the skies of the Gaza Strip. Those drones get so close, near tents where they work, where the journalists are trying to work, or to sometimes get some rest. The journalists also work while starving. They feel hungry. They cannot find water. They suffer from the same conditions as all the other people in Gaza. We were not able to recognise the bodies of many of our colleagues. We can't recognise them because they've lost half of their weight. And I have to mention here that it is 1,000 times more difficult now. These journalists spend time together with their neighbours and their colleagues, also trying to at least secure just a few grams of flour and a few litres of water. They also spend time trying to collect information and images so that they can broadcast them to the whole world. The international community does not know what is happening, the starvation, the killings, and that's why the journalists are targeted, because they thwart Israel's plan. Israel is bothered by the journalists, and that's why Israel doesn't allow foreign journalists in Gaza, despite all the pressure being exerted from different sides.
It's such important and courageous work, isn't it? On this tragic day for journalism and indeed for our colleagues, how would you remember Anas and his team that have died so tragically?
هو حقيقة هذه من أصعب الأمور.
In fact, this is one of the most difficult things for a professional journalist as myself, remembering my colleagues. This is very difficult. This is very tough. As tough as remembering the loss of the loved ones, including the wife, the children, and our relatives who are part of our body and our hearts. So remembering that every one of our colleagues had a story, ambitions, a family, how they used to sleep, how they used to walk, how they used to cope with the situation. With this, how they used to stand in front of the camera, how they used to face all the problems and to work and be part of a team. They have also the spirit of perseverance, determination as well, despite all these circumstances. So you share a piece of bread with your colleagues. Maybe sometimes you share a place to sleep, some sheets to cover yourself, and you just wait for the worst to happen at any moment. Sometimes you take risks together just to get some footage or images that you can share with the rest of the world. This makes the journalist a real partner in the soul and in the body and in the mission of conveying the message. So when you are killed in this horrific way, you really feel that you are losing a part of your soul, a part of your body, a part of your past, and also a part from your future, from the story that you want to tell, from the ambitions that you have. Some of our colleagues across the world may have experienced some similar conditions to a certain extent, but I do not believe that they've lived the conditions in which we have. That's why I say to our colleagues across the globe, especially in Europe and in the United States, have a big role and a big mission towards their colleagues. We look at them as we are one body, as we are partners in humanity and the profession that we exercise, and also the humanitarian message that we are trying to convey. And we are risking our lives to convey this message for the whole humanity. And for all those reasons, we have paid a big price.
Indeed, Anas and the team gave their lives to tell the world the reality of life on the ground in Gaza. Very briefly, Wael, if you would, how do journalists in Gaza feel? And you are one of them. How do you feel about the fact that this story that you've been witnessing and telling the world about, and yet there is no real international action from world leaders?
هو من أصعب المشاعر والتجارب التي يمكن أن تعيشها كصحفي.
It is one of the most difficult and toughest feelings that you can experience as a person, as a human being in Gaza, which is like a big prison. You face all these challenges on a daily basis while exercising your profession. And sometimes you have this feeling that you are someone who is just a drop in the ocean. It's the same feeling, or pouring water in the desert. Maybe they empathize with us, sometimes a little. However, nobody is really doing anything in a serious manner in order to put an end to this tragedy and to this genocide. In fact, this is one of the toughest and most challenging experiences that you can have as a journalist, as you expect your brothers in the same profession or from the world to do something. That's why I have to say that sometimes in an honest way. We think, frankly, that this silence is even more heartbreaking than the fact that we were bombed.
Don't miss out and get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.